Man, there's a kid's book I got to dig out. I think it's been forever, but I probably have a lot of it memorized. But it's my favorite book. But the title is what got me. It is Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day by Judith Voist. It is by far one of my favorite books because it's negative in all its completeness. It's about a little boy who feels like the whole world is against him, and everybody's getting ahead. And so it's a great little story, and he gets all the way through. It's like, I'm having a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day, and nobody cares, right? And so it's just this process that goes on. You should read the book. It's powerful. But listen, here's what I do know. If you're breathing, you got troubles, right? I forgot what the musical was, Trouble, right here in River City, but that's kind of what we are, right? There's just trouble, right? Everywhere you look. Now, how we deal with it is another game, but nobody gets out of this without trouble. I mean, it's just there, right? When I walked into the house yesterday, and my cousin's sitting there, and she's just weeping because she's the one who found her daughter, and she's like, we just don't know what happened. She just didn't wake up. And so, man, that's a hard deal in life, right? And so those things are there, right? We've all got troubles. Job says it like this: as surely as sparks fly upward, man is born for trouble. Right? You've been by fire. You know what happened, man. Those sparks start clicking and they're just going. And he goes, that's what my life looks like. All those sparks are just troubles. And it's like they never end. They just keep, that fire. As long as that fire's going, it's just like trouble everywhere. Acts 14:22, Paul says this, or Luke does rather, we must go through many hardships to enter the kingdom of heaven. Right? God didn't call us to an easy life. If somebody told you, come to Jesus and he'll take away your pain, they lied to you. He just promises to be with you in those things. That is a promise you can count on. And I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Right? And so we have that promise. But there's hardship. To get from here to heaven, we have to endure a lot of hardship. And so this is where we're going. This is the passage that we're in today. Just to remind you about James. James is getting us and squeezing the hypocrisy out of us so that what we know to be true, we're actually living out. And so this whole book is about that. And so last week we looked at the fact that there would be greedy people, and he gave some hard woes in that passage there. And I'm going to read it because it sets us up for this one. But he says, "Now listen, you rich people, weep and wail because your misery that is coming upon you." Now he's not talking to Christian rich folk. He's talking to people who are wealthy and they want to pretend to be that. But this is an indictment. He says this: your wealth is rotted and moths have eaten your clothes. Your gold and silver are corroded. Their corrosion will testify against you and eat your flesh like fire. You have hoarded wealth in the last days. Look, the wages you failed to pay the workmen who mowed your fields are crying out against you. The cries of the harvesters have reached the ears of the Lord Almighty. You have lived on earth in luxury and self-indulgence. You have fattened yourselves in the day of slaughter. You have condemned and murdered innocent men who were not opposing you. Right? And so then, after doing that, we read in verse 7, this is where we're going. Be patient then, brothers, until the coming of the Lord. Right? So now, he spoke about them. So the context is evil people who just seek to give us. This is about people troubles. Now, we all have troubles, but this specifically today, now we're going to draw application all over the place, but this is about people troubles, right? And this is what it is. And he's saying, now listen, brothers. So this is, if you got people troubles, this is a good passage for you to just kind of settle in on and look at. Now, before we get there, though, yesterday, Tammy and I had a little downtime after the deal. She's still trying to recover from everything going on in her world, and so we had talked about maybe going out of town and doing some other things. She just wasn't up for it, so we just kind of hunkered in. I did a little piddle work around here, and she did what she did, and then we went to see my cousin. Came back, and my grandson, my oldest grandson in Nashville, Owen, he's reading. I'm trying to encourage it, so I bought him some books that are some really good adventure books from a Christian perspective, and so I mailed him one. And so he, who's messaged me, hey, thanks, Poppy. And I said, so what are you reading right now? Because he's got, how they make you read through the summer. So he said, I can't read it yet because I got to get finished with all these things. So he's reading Prince Caspian, which I love that, right? That's a series of C.S. Lewis Chronicles of Narnia. And then he said, I'm reading The Watsons Go to Birmingham. And I thought, well, I don't know that book. So I started digging in, and we found a movie based on it in 2013. And so I pulled it up. Now, the Watsons are a black family living in Flint, Michigan. And the mom, grew up in Birmingham, and she wanted to take her kids down there to meet, to just visit the grandparents for the weekend. Well, they go down there, and the whole story is about just the atrocities that were taking place in our city here in Birmingham to the black folk while they were growing up. And so you see the 16th Street bombing and all those things taking place. And one of the grandkids went in, didn't know any better, walked into a store to get a hot dog, and the whole world seemed to come unhinged because of that. It was just sad to watch, and you realize, man, what a difficult time, right? That it was in those. And I mean, I remember being a kid, but I was oblivious to that stuff, and of course, that wasn't coming against me. I'm just a little white kid living in the suburbs. But man, the brutality of that was horrendous. And so this is the aspect of what he's saying. This is what happens, man, when people come over the top of you and they're bringing trouble undeserved. How are we going to respond? Now, I don't want it all to be about that because the application here is too great. But so let's read this text together. It's real simple, and it's probably not a very lengthy message. It's just filled with some great, powerful truth. He says this: be patient then. Now, yours may say therefore. The New American Standard says therefore. And anytime, I'm going to just remind you, good Bible study, anytime you see a therefore, you stop and ask, what's it there for, right? And so it says therefore, so we go, wait a minute, what's it there for? So in order to do that, I have to go back to the front end. And that's where we know that he's speaking, hey, be patient when greedy people are doing all the things that they're doing to you. Be patient here. That's a good word. It's a good word. Because listen, there's so much division now, and people with power not, and you see it going on everywhere. You hardly escape this reality that we're all feel like prisoners sometimes, don't we? To people that have authority over us, and we don't know what to do about it. Here's what he says: be patient then, brothers, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, and how patient he is for the autumn and the spring rains. You too, be patient and stand firm, because the Lord is coming is near. Don't grumble against each other, brothers, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we consider blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion, full of mercy. This is a great word for you and me about how do we handle these troubles that come our way. And so this is where we're going. And man, he jumps into the whole context of a farmer. So he gives us a couple of illustrations. The first one is the patience of a farmer, right? And so that's kind of where we find ourselves. Now, I'm not a patient farmer. I'm not that in any way. I don't like the whole weeding thing. There was a time when we had a little farm out in Springville, had 8 acres, and the man before us used to till this whole thing. And I'm like, that is not my life. And so Mr. Allred could keep that. I wanted a little garden, and I love to create. And so Tammy wanted a garden, and I love that girl. And so we built this French garden. I literally created the pickets myself because we tore the house down. We took all the old siding off of it. I ripped them down on my saw, put the peaks in them, created a fence around this thing. I took a cedar tree and all the branches and wove this arbor. It was an incredible arbor, about 4 feet thick and about 5 feet wide. And it was the entrance to this thing. I put raised beds. Had little pea gravel trails in between it, had a little rocking chair at the far end because you're supposed to have something visual to look at to draw you to walk into the garden. So all of that. And we planted the stuff, and it was gorgeous for about 3 weeks. You know what you got to do when you have a garden? You got to weed that sucker. Well, it's hard work. and then you got to make sure, you don't overwater, underwater, and all this kind of stuff. And it was kind of at a slope, so when it rained, it was like it was flooded. And so a lot of the vegetables, that's my ignorance, but a lot of the vegetables didn't happen, and so the things that we wanted just didn't come about, right? I mean, that's just what happens. And so this is what he's talking about here. But listen, the farmer has some things that are outside his control. Now, weeding is not outside his control, right? But when you farm, there's certain things that are outside your control. You're subject to the rain, right, to the Lord. I mean, we can water our plants, but really, in big places, you're just subject to some. You're just trusting God's going to bring the rain, right? I mean, that's what has to happen, and not too much of it, just enough. And no matter how much you try to keep predators out of your garden, that's the hardest thing in the world to do. You can use every invention man's created, and they'll still find their way into your garden. I still haven't gotten blueberries off my blueberry bush, and I don't know if it's the rabbits that run through our neighborhood or what, or it's people. But I'm not getting the blueberries I want out of my little 4 trees over here. It's been 2 years now. I'm like, come on, I'm ready, right? And so it's like, how do we get out of that? There's a great movie that Tammy and I watched years ago called Faith Like Potatoes. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but you should see it. It's a great story. Because what I didn't know was that when you put potatoes in the ground to come up, you don't see these little sprouts like, something germinated and there it is, right? And you can see it and you can watch it kind of grow and then you see the fruit pop out. You don't do that with potatoes. You just leave them sit for a season and then you start digging. And you either have potatoes or you don't have potatoes. And you have no idea. So you put all your money in this potato farm and there's nothing you can do about it but just wait for those things to grow underground that you can't see. And then when you start tilling it over, you just hope that potatoes are there. And sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. And so this is exactly what he's talking about here. Be patient there, brothers, for the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land yield its valuable crop and how patient it is for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient. Stand firm. Now, we're going to find some principles as it kind of unlays through here. And I got about 5 of them I think we're looking at as we'll just see it flow through the text. But certain variables are outside of our control. You know what I've realized? It's a myth if you think you can control your kids because you can't, right? You can't control your wife. You can't control your boss. You can't control your employees. We really have very little things that we can control about. And so this is the reality that he's talking about here. Hey, when troubles come, listen, some of these things are outside our control, right? And so this is the first thing that I think we come to. When we're talking about troubles, and right now we have a lot. I mean, I was thinking about this week as I'm praying through things. How many of us have just troubles? Not necessarily from people. This is why I want this to be broader than just the context here of the people. But we all have troubles. There's not a person you know, and I know you get tired of me saying that. We're all either going into a trouble, we're in the middle of a trouble, or we're coming out of a trouble. But trouble is just coming, right? It's exactly what Job said. And so here's what I think is helpful for us to do, because that's what he's saying here. Listen, the farmer is dependent on the seasonal rains that come. They can't worry about that. So I think the first principle for you and me we have to understand is that I have to list out what I can't control. Right? What about this thing can I not control? Tammy and I mean, we've been in a trial for just it feels brief compared to everybody else's, but you know, she had breast cancer, and so we're working through that. And there's certain things that we can't control, right? I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going on. It's part I have to trust what they're saying and ask the right questions to at least discover things. But there's certain things that are just beyond our control. Any time spent worrying about those things we can't control is stealing your life, right? Those things you can control, you're going to control. Those things you can't, what good does it do you to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and worry about what could happen, right? I mean, I know we all do it. I'm not saying it's not a reality, but it shouldn't be. That's what I'm trying. This is what we're learning here, right? Anytime that I spend time worrying about things that that are outside my control, I'm stealing the life that I should be living right now. Now listen, the world doesn't know how to do that. You and I do, because you and I know that there's a God in heaven who controls all. He controls those people, and he controls everything else. Now, I'm not advising that we pray this way, but it does hit me, and I've mentioned it several times. Paul, in one of his letters, writes this: Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm. May the Lord repay him in kind, right? That's a prayer I can wrap my teeth around. I can, there's certain times I'm like, okay, look, I may not can control you, but I know one who can. So I can spend my time doing that, right? I mean, before Tammy went in surgery, I'm asking the Lord to pay. Make sure that doctor had a good night's sleep. Make sure he's alert, right? Make sure he's got no distractions and his phone's on silent or whatever happens in that room. But I want him to be in complete control using the wisdom and the tools that you've granted that man to have, right? I mean, so I can't ask that. I can't control what happens in there, but I can sure cry out to the one who does. And so that's the first thing, man. What I can't control, I'm not worrying about. So I'm telling you, I'm a guy, by God's grace, I don't worry. I'm not anxious about things. It's just not in me. Not because I'm made up different, but because early on, I was just foolish enough to trust what I was being taught from the Bible and in church. And I believe it. Not just in my head, I believe it, right? And so once it's in your knower, it's a different thing. So then the battle is, what can I control and what can I not, right? And so quit worrying about what you can't control. I can't control what people say about me. I can control how I respond, but I can't control what they say. And sometimes I don't even know what they're saying out there. But I can't control that. I'm not going to worry about that. And there was a time when it felt like I was the center of this incredible rumor mill that was going on in Clay back when we were pastoring church over there. And man, Tammy kept wanting me to defend myself, because that's what you do when you love somebody and you see them going through junk. I'm like, man, if I started trying to defend myself, I'd never get anything done. I'm just going to try and outlast them. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, and maybe my right actions will outlast that stuff. So we'll see. I guess the verdict's still out on that, although I am still kicking. But here's the thing, right? You list out what you can't control and then quit worrying about that. Second thing is we're going to be patient. Isn't that what he says? Be patient then, brothers. Until what? Until the Lord's coming. Not until my troubles is done, but until the Lord comes back. I'm going to trust. I'm going to wait on the Lord, right? So the second thing, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be patient. This is a great word. Patience means to bear under the weight of something. That's what that means. But it also means unmoved by circumstances. This is what this means. So when you see the term patient there, be patient then, what he's saying is be unmoved by the circumstances. Be unmoved by what you see. Now, Paul in Ephesians 4 says, talking to you and me believers, and says, man, you got this great calling. You are blessed with every blessing in the spirit, blessed in the heaven, in spirit, every spiritual blessing in the heavens. You've been adopted, you've been accepted, you've been forgiven. Grace has been lavished on you. The Holy Spirit has been deposited in you, and there's an inheritance you have and is coming, right? He tells me all that, and then he says, listen, I put you in a church, into the body of Christ, that together you exclusively would begin to house the fullness of the living God, that we would put it on display to the world, and we would enjoy the fruit of what it means to have the fullness of God with us. Chapter 3, he goes a little further in some of those things. When he gets to chapter 4, he says, in light of this incredible calling, I urge you, brother, to be completely humble, because it has nothing to do with you. Be completely gentle, because your harshness isn't going to make anything any better. Be patient. That's unmoved by circumstances. And be forbearing to one another. That is unmoved by people. And so here's what he's saying here, and this is the reality. Listen, just be patient, right? Be unmoved by your circumstances. It is what it is. I'm gonna wait on the Lord, right? Hey, we can act like, no, I don't have cancer, or no, I don't have this, I don't have that, or we can go, apparently I do. It is what it is. I'm gonna wait on the Lord, right? This is where we have to get. Be patient. God is doing some things. He ain't never late. I'm gonna remind you of that. Rarely is he early. He's usually just right on time, right? I wish he was early. Wouldn't that help? He's here. Yes, but no. It's like the whole world feels like it's crashing down. It's like, where are you? And he's like, he comes in just at the nick of time, right? So we just have to know that. My Savior's coming. My defender is coming. The one who promised me that he would never leave me is on his way. He's going to get there, because everything's bound by his time, not mine. I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait. Right? This is good word here. This is what he's talking about. Third thing, and this is a great reality, what does he say? You too be patient, stand firm. Don't grumble against each other, brothers. But strengthen your hearts, right? There's this aspect of strengthening our heart. Now, this is what we need, right? My heart sometimes gets a little weak. Does yours? You go through troubles and you start thinking about all the what ifs, right? It happens. It happens to all of us. We were talking, I think yesterday, the day before, she'd been talking to somebody who said, it seemed like 3 o'clock. I wake up and there's when all my troubles are. Yeah, mine's about 2:30, but it's the same thing, right? At 2:30, I'm the worst person on the planet. No one loves me, and everybody hates me, and I should just go out in the garden and eat worms because it's just a terrible life. And then I just remind myself that that's just silly, and I tell the Lord, thank you for loving me, and I go to sleep and move on with my day. But it's hard, isn't it? It's helpful if you know what you know. So you strengthen your heart. If you believe the Lord is coming back and he's going to fight these fights, then just stand firm, right? Paul tells in Ephesians, he says this, act like men. Stand firm. I think our generation, this generation coming up probably needs, start acting like a man. Stand firm, right? Don't kowtow to everything. We stand. Now, I'm not standing on me. I'm standing on the Word of God. I'm standing on the solid ground of grace and mercy that my God will deliver me. Right? You believe that? I'm more than a conqueror through him. What can separate me from him? Anything? Nothing. Not this trouble, not my attitude. Even if my attitude stinks in that trouble, he's still going to deliver me from those troubles. Right? He knows all that stuff. So you and I have to grab hold of this and just know this about that. And then what we know about truth. It's just important that we see that and we know. So sometimes standing firm means I'm going to go back through the old books of promises that I have and just remind myself of who he is. Sometimes I just need to be around people who will remind me of those things. I got this guy at work. We call him Leg. I'm not really sure what his real name is. That's the only name he ever gives us. He's an old cuss. And he is deeply in love with Jesus. And he'll cuss too, right? You got folk like that? I'm just telling you, he's just that guy. And man, when he walks in, you know Jesus has just shown up in that man. And I'm telling you, you cannot have a bad day when Leg walks in. And so I've watched him as he's worked other people, and you just see him. You see everything change about him. And my nephew, who just started working with us, who's kind of had a hard, difficult life, so my nephew's a truck driver, and so is Leg. And so Leg comes in to do some deliveries for us. And so he said, man, I met your nephew. And he just kept talking about what a great kid he was. He says, here's what I said to him. And I could see the difference in my nephew's life because Leg is around, right? And so here's what we know. We need people in our life. When we're in trouble, who know how to stand firm with us and just remind us about who God is. You cannot go through your troubles alone. You just cannot do that. It's impossible. So he says, you be patient, strengthen your hearts, right? That's what he says. Be patient then, brothers, until the Lord's coming. Verse 8, he says, you too be patient and stand firm. That's what it means to strengthen your heart with what you know to be true. The Lord's coming. The Lord's coming. There's not one thing that's happened in my life that hadn't been sifted through his hands. We know that, right? We know that. He didn't cause it. He did allow it. He didn't cause it. He knew that Joseph was going to get accused of committing adultery. He knew his brothers were going to toss him in the pit. But he used it to strengthen Joseph, to get him to the place where he wanted him. And that's all this whole thing is about, right? That's all this is. Don't complain. That's what he says. Don't grumble, verse 9. It's interesting how we can change the world by that one thing. Paul told the Philippians, do all things without grumbling or complaining, that you may shine as lights amidst the perversion of a wicked and perverse generation. Right? The whole world is doing this stuff. You know who stands out? Those who don't grumble and complain. That doesn't sound like a lot of Christians I see on social media these days, but it ought to be who our makeup. We just don't grumble and complain. Just, hey, it's okay. Be that. It's okay. Don't play the victim. I'm so tired of seeing Christians act like they're victims of everything. Man, the government's not your trouble. You're your trouble. Right? Find out whatever it is you're upset about and quit playing the victim. Just stop it. Quit looking for scapegoats. Somebody to blame. No. Just walk through life. Does you no good to know who to blame. It doesn't do you any good at all. Troubles come, right? And we want to be wise, but it doesn't do me any good to find a scapegoat in that whole thing. He says this, you know why? Because a just judge is going to sort it all out. Don't grumble against each other, brothers. See, he knows our troubles. Our troubles come, and instead of being patient, we go, I'm just going to complain. I'm going to whine and complain, and I'm going to stomp my feet, and I'm going to pitch a fit until somebody pays attention to me. And he goes, hey, man, the judge is paying attention to you. Straight up. I am one of those guys that had to sit in court before. And I would show up, Tammy and I would show up early. I'd sit on the front row, have my little suit jacket on. I was trying to look as good as I could. And my lawyer came in. He saw me with no socks on. He said, put some socks on. That's the first time anybody ever told me to put socks on. I'm like, oh, yes, sir, I'm gonna put some socks on. But he said, I love that you get here early. He said, because the judge is watching and they know that stuff. And so when they see how you behave, it does make a difference. And so that's what's going on here. It's just like, look, the judges, don't grumble against each other, brothers, or you'll be judged. The judge is standing at the door. It's powerful, right? And so, listen, don't complain. Don't whine. I'm going to remind you, I can't control what others do, but I can control how I respond to what others do. And here's the thing, Tammy and I, we talk about a lot. I take every thought captive. I'm going to remind you what that means, because some people think that when it says take every thought captive, Paul says that means that we don't think about it, right? That I'm not going to think about that. I'm not going to think about this. I'm not going to think about that. No, that's not how it works. In order to render something incapacitated, you have to see what's the worst that can happen in that scenario. So some of the conversation Tammy and I had, whether it was big or small or whatever, there was a time, or the place where we're looking at this, and it's at the front end of what's going on. And we go, well, we don't know how this is going to turn out. Her cancer could be a blip. Could end in her going home to see Jesus. So once you allow that thought to go in that direction, and you go, well, are we going to be okay with that? Well, I'll be sad. I won't see my grandkids. I'll be sad because I'll never find another woman who will marry me, right? I mean, so there's all kind of things in that process, but you go, okay, well, if that's the worst that can happen, we're okay, right? You rendered it powerless. I realize a lot of people don't like to do that. We're afraid to let our mind go there because we think somehow that our thoughts will bring something to fruition. That's just mystical, spiritual garbage in that sense. And so it's okay to have those thoughts and then to realize, okay, well, it's powerless now. Death can't hold me down. Kill me, man, right? I'm okay. See, if you can face it like that, everything else is a win at that point. And so this is how we look at things. This is how it happens. I can take every thought captive because I will see where will it take me. And if I'm okay with that, because I trust in God, I ain't got no worries in. I can live my life, right? Man, this is good. I'm telling you, this is good. Now, then he says this, hey, and look to other examples. And sometimes it's important for us to do that, right? I love it. When we're in the midst of a trouble, I like to find somebody that didn't go to jail. I like to find somebody whose cancer is gone. I like to, right? I mean, whatever trouble's coming, I like to see a success story somewhere. And so this is what he's saying here. Listen, he says, brothers, as an example, verse 10, of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. As you know, we consider blessed those who persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Now, we don't have to understand that whole story, because we know Job, right? We know that story. It's a crazy story. The whole world shatters in front of him, and he's sitting on a heap with physical wounds, and he's just at this place. He's got a wife who's going, hey, you know what the best solution is? Yeah, curse God and die. Try that. And he's got friends who are going, no, it's all your fault. So his friends keep showing up telling him it's his fault, and here's why. You know, you're not as spiritual as you think you are, and all these things, and here's what's going on. And he's like, I don't know any of that. I do know this, that my Redeemer lives, right? And I will yet see him. And so he loses everything, and then now I realize he loses, his kids, and he gets new kids. You go, yeah, but you lost the old kids. The point is, God is compassionate and merciful, and he will still give us good things, right? That's why the psalmist cries out, I will yet see the goodness of the Lord. Isn't that a good one? Especially for us that maybe think our time might be gone. And we go, no, I'm not ready yet, right? That's a great, strong thing to hold on to. I've tried that out so many times. Lord, I will still yet see your goodness in the land of living. Because when I felt like my whole world was crashing in, because we had a church that was falling in decay from every way I could look, I was like, I will yet see the goodness in the Lord in the land of living. When I was getting assaulted and was given felonies that I didn't do, and I'm standing before a judge with 10 of those things, I'm like, I will yet see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. When Tammy comes up with this stuff, I will yet see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. When Jared was told that they've got a daughter that was going to be physically challenged, the rest of it, I will yet see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. Right? Don't you let go of that promise. That's a great promise. And this is what we're finding here in this truth. You don't think we got to look at Moses? How many of you got all you want to? Hey, if somebody can play the victim, it was him. Lord, you gave me this folk. You made them send out here, and they're a bunch of babies. I don't know why I ain't leading. I told you I'd rather lead my father-in-law's sheep than to have to come out here and do this. And you forced my hand. I'm here because of you. But yes, that's not what you got out of Moses. He did cry out to God, but he stayed faithful. He may have faltered a time or two. But what a privilege to go up on the mountain and, guys, I'm going to show you what is. Then I'm going to take you to the better place. I'm going to show you the vision of what the promised land looks like. And then I'm going to take you to the real one. Right? He didn't lose out. You understand that? He didn't see the physical one, but he saw the real one. And the Lord buried him so that no one could find him and said, come on with me. Come on, I'm telling you, that's a good end. That's not a bad end. I know some people like to think, well, it was that's what happens when you don't do right. No. God was gracious in all of that. He just knew his season had come to an end because he had fulfilled the purposes God had for him. It's Joshua's turn to stand up, right? We know this. So we see success everywhere here. And so he just says, hey, just do the right thing. Why? Because the last phrase, the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. It may not feel like it, but he is. Hey, life ain't the end. We know that, right? The goal isn't just to live. The goal is to live forever, with or without this body. That's the goal. And so, man, this is good. This is so good. I love James and everything in this. Hey, that's the message. I thought it was going to be short, but it doesn't look like it was. Sorry about that. We're going to sing a song, and then we're going to celebrate the Lord's Supper. It's going to be a great day.